My son ran straight past her, arms out, shouting, "Mom!" And she wasn't the one he was running to. 7 years since my wife walked out. Sure, I'd never managed 2 kids alone. Sure, they'd cry for her every single night. They stopped crying long before I stopped expecting them to. Someone else learned their bedtime routines, their fears, their favorite songs. My wife came back today to reclaim a word she'd given up the right to. Thank you for being here. Before I begin, I'd love to hear from you. What are you doing right now while you listen? Cooking dinner, driving home, or maybe just taking a quiet moment for yourself? Drop a comment and let me know. Your presence here means more than you realize. A quick note. Some details in this story have been shaped for reflection and impact, but the heart of it, the message, is what I hope stays with you. Felix burst through the elementary school doors shouting, "Mom!" toward a woman who wasn't his mother. I stood at the pickup line watching my 9-year-old son barrel across the parking lot, backpack bouncing against his shoulders, arms already reaching for the embrace waiting 30 feet ahead. Denise Hampton saw him coming and dropped to one knee, that patient smile she'd worn for 3 years of school pickups spreading across her face. Felix didn't hesitate, didn't glance left or right, didn't notice the woman standing alone beside a silver Honda Accord 50 feet to his left. He ran straight past her. "Mom! Mom!" Felix crashed into Denise's arms with the full-body enthusiasm only a 9-year-old can muster. "We got to dissect owl pellets today." Denise caught him, steady as always, ruffling his sandy hair. "Did you find any bones, buddy?" "3 whole skulls!" Felix pulled back just enough to look at her face, his hands still gripping her shoulders. "Can we get McDonald's?" I watched this scene unfold, the way I'd watched 1,000 others just like it. Pickup lines and homework questions and requests for fast food. I'd probably say yes, because Thursday had been long and I was too tired to cook. Ordinary. Beautiful in its ordinariness. Earned through 7 years of showing up. But today wasn't ordinary. Across the parking lot, Colleen Morgan stood frozen beside her car. I'd known she was there before Felix came out. Spotted her Honda when I arrived 15 minutes early, the way I always did. Watched her position herself at the edge of the lot, where she'd have a clear view of the school entrance. She'd probably rehearsed what to say, how to smile, whether to wave or wait for him to notice her first. She'd prepared for everything except the possibility that her son wouldn't see her at all. There are moments that rewrite a person's understanding of their place in the world. I watched one happen in real time, written across Colleen's face as Felix ran past her like she was invisible. Her hand came up. Reflex, maybe. The beginning of a wave that died mid-gesture. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. The truth was settling in her chest, the way truth does when you can't argue with it anymore. 7 years have a way of erasing people. Felix was 2 when she left. Old enough to remember a face if that face had stayed. Young enough to forget when it didn't. "Dad!" Felix spotted me standing 10 feet behind Denise, still watching the parking lot. "Did you hear? 3 skulls. I heard, buddy." I forced my attention back to my son. Let the smile come naturally, because it always did when I looked at him. "That's pretty cool." Denise straightened, her hand resting on Felix's shoulder in that casual, possessive way mothers do. She followed my gaze across the lot, saw what I was seeing, understood immediately. She'd always been good at reading the spaces between my words. "That's her, isn't it?" Her voice stayed quiet, calm. Pediatric nurses learn to stay calm when the ground shifts. I barely nodded. "Yes." "How long has she been watching?" 3 days. I'd spotted the Honda on Monday afternoon, parked in the same spot. Tuesday, she'd moved closer. Wednesday, she'd stayed in the car. Today, she'd gotten out. Escalation. She's working up the courage. Denise's hand tightened on Felix's shoulder, but her voice stayed steady. Does he know? How long does it take for a 9-year-old to forget the face of someone who left when he was 2? I could have told her the answer was 7 years, but she already knew. She'd been there for 4 of them, watching Felix grow from a confused 5-year-old who sometimes asked about the woman in old photos to a 9-year-old who called her mom without thinking twice. Felix, I said, keeping my voice light, go grab your stuff from Denise's car. I need to talk to her for a second. But McDonald's! We'll get McDonald's, promise. He ran off, appeased by the certainty in my voice. 7 years of single fatherhood had taught me which battles to fight and which to surrender before they started. Denise waited until he was out of earshot, what do you want to do? She wasn't asking what I wanted to do about Colleen. She was asking what we wanted to do. Partnership. Earned through 1,000 ordinary moments that had become extraordinary in their consistency. Nothing. The word came out harder than I meant it to. I softened. Not here. Not today. I'd spent 7 years preparing for this possibility. Not through lawyers or custody battles or poisoning my children against their mother. Those were the obvious moves, the ones people expected. I'd chosen a different strategy. Presence. Just showing up. Every breakfast, every homework session, every bedtime story, every school pickup. I'd never told Felix to forget his mother. Time had done that work for me, naturally, the way children forget things that disappear from their daily lives. You don't fight for custody by fighting. You win by being there when it doesn't feel like a battle at all. Denise nodded slowly. She understood. She'd earned her place the same way I had, not through drama or declarations, but through being the one who showed up. The one Felix called when he needed someone. The one whose face he looked for in the crowd. Across the parking lot, Colleen's hand dropped from where it had been pressed against her car door. She was staring at us now, at the 3 of us standing together in the pickup line like we belonged there. Like we were a family. Because we were. I met her gaze for the first time in 7 years. Didn't wave. Didn't approach. Didn't need to. Truth was already written in the space between us. In the boy who'd run past her without recognition. In the woman whose face he'd sought instead. Colleen had left predicting I'd fail within a month. Betting I couldn't handle 2 kids alone. Counting on me to crack. To call her begging for help. To prove she'd been right to leave. She'd been wrong. Neither of us moved. The parking lot noise faded. Other parents calling to their kids, car doors slamming, engines starting, until it was just us, locked in silent acknowledgement of what 7 years of absence had cost her. Felix came running back, oblivious to the tension crackling across 50 feet of asphalt. Ready? Can we go now? I tore my gaze away from Colleen. Yeah, buddy, let's go. Colleen's stare dragged me back 7 years to the last time we'd stood this close. May 2018. Our apartment in Liberty City, the one with the leaky faucet I'd been meaning to fix. I came home from my shift at Miami International to find 3 suitcases lined up beside the front door. Colleen stood in the hallway, already wearing her jacket, keys in hand. I'm leaving, she said. Not we need to talk or I'm sorry. Just the fact, delivered clean. Serena, 9 years old then, was asleep in her bedroom. Unaware her mother was leaving forever. Felix, barely 2, dozed in his crib with his thumb in his mouth. Neither of them knew the door was about to close on the family they'd been born into. There's someone else, Colleen continued, like she was reading from a rehearsed script. Someone who doesn't work nights. Someone who actually has time for a relationship. She'd packed while I was at work. Methodical. Planned. This wasn't an impulse. It was an execution. You won't last a month, Desmond. Her voice carried that edge of certainty people get when they're convinced they're doing you a favor by being honest. You work nights. You don't know how to do her hair. You've never handled a sick toddler alone. She wasn't wrong about the facts. I did work nights. I had never successfully French braided anything. My interaction with Felix's fevers had always involved handing him to Colleen, while I stood by feeling useless. "Call me when you realize you need me," she said, lifting the first suitcase. "I'll still be their mother." There are two kinds of abandonment. The one where someone leaves, and the one where they leave betting you'll fail without them. Colleen wasn't just walking out. She was setting up her return, banking on my collapse to prove she'd been necessary all along. I didn't say anything. Didn't argue or beg. I just watched the door close and listened to her footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I stood in the silence of an apartment that suddenly felt enormous, staring at 2-bedroom doors. I had no idea how to explain to a 9-year-old that her mother had calculated the exact worth of her children and found it less than freedom. The first month was worse than Colleen had predicted. Felix got a fever that spiked to 104 at 2 in the morning. I drove to Miami Children's Hospital in my pajamas, Serena silent in the back seat, holding her brother's hand while he cried. The nurse who checked us in didn't ask where my wife was. I was grateful for that small mercy. I learned to French braid through YouTube videos at midnight, my fingers clumsy and too large for Serena's fine hair. She sat patient and still while I practiced, never complaining when I pulled too hard or started over for the 5th time. 9 years old and already learning to be smaller, quieter, easier, already trying to make up for the space her mother had left empty. "Is Mom coming back for my birthday?" she asked one evening, her voice so quiet I almost missed it. "I don't know, sweetheart," I told her, because I'd promised myself I wouldn't lie to my children. "But I'm here." She nodded like that was enough. It killed me that she'd learned to accept so little. You don't learn to be both parents in a single night. You learn it in 3,000 nights strung together by coffee and stubbornness, and the particular exhaustion that comes from attending parent-teacher conferences alone while other families arrive in pairs. You learn it in playground trips where you're the only father surrounded by mothers who've formed their own support network, their own language you'll never fully speak. I learned Felix's favorite bedtime stories by heart, because he needed the same ones repeated until the words stopped meaning anything and became just rhythm and comfort. I learned which teachers at Serena's school would actually listen, and which ones would smile and nod and do nothing. I learned to keep emergency clothes in my car, to pack lunches the night before, to set 17 alarms so I'd never miss a pickup time. I never called Colleen's number, not during the fever, not during the school conferences, not when Felix asked at age 3, "Daddy, why you crying in the kitchen?" I'd been standing at the sink at midnight, wondering how I was going to pay for Serena's field trip and Felix's daycare in the same month. She'd said I'd last a month. It's been 84. The parking lot snapped back into focus. Colleen stood exactly where I'd left her 7 years ago, waiting for my collapse, for proof she'd been right, for the phone call that never came. She said I'd call within a month, I thought, still holding her gaze across 50 feet of asphalt. She said I couldn't do it alone, but I wasn't alone. I had them. Behind me, Denise had already buckled Felix into her car. I could hear his voice, muffled through the window, still talking about owl pellets and McDonald's and all the ordinary concerns of a 9-year-old whose world was secure. He had no idea the woman across the parking lot had given birth to him, had no idea that she'd predicted his father would fail him, had no idea how catastrophically wrong she'd been. What do you say to someone who predicted your collapse and returned to find a fortress instead? Colleen's hand came up, steadying herself against the car. Then she took one step forward. Just one. Her mouth opened like she was about to call out, about to cross the space between us and demand explanations for the 7 years that stood between the prediction she'd made and the reality she was witnessing. I didn't move, didn't retreat, didn't advance. Felix was safe in Denise's car. Serena was at home, 16 now, doing homework and waiting for dinner. The life I'd built was secured behind me like a wall. The conversation that had been waiting 7 years was about to begin, whether either of us was ready or not. But that conversation didn't begin in the parking lot. It started 3 weeks earlier at 8:07 p.m. on a Thursday, when my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I was home from my shift at Miami International, browning ground beef for tacos. Serena was doing homework in her room. Felix sprawled on the living room floor, complaining about fractions. Ordinary evening, the kind I'd built 10,000 times over 7 years. The phone screen lit up. Unknown number, 305 area code, Miami. I almost ignored it, expecting spam. The text read, "How are the kids?" 4 words. No name. No greeting. No acknowledgement of 7 years of silence. As if she'd stepped out for groceries instead of abandoning her family. I knew immediately who it was. You don't forget the particular weight of someone's absence. She doesn't even say her name, I thought. Like I wouldn't know. No apology. No explanation. Just casual inquiry delivered like someone checking in after a long weekend. 7 years of silence doesn't end with a casual text. It ends with the illusion that silence never happened at all. I set the phone down and turned back to the stove, stirring beef while my mind cycled through responses. Answer honestly, demand explanation, block the number. But my work training surfaced. When you find a fault in an aircraft system, you don't make a quick fix. You map the entire problem first. You gather data. You understand what you're dealing with before you touch anything, because rushed repairs create cascade failures. Colleen's return was a complex system. "Dad!" Felix's voice from the living room. "What's 8 divided by 3? 2.66, I called back, voice steady, repeating. "That's weird. Math's like that sometimes, buddy." I picked up the phone again and saved the number under a simple identifier. CM. 2 letters. Nothing that would trigger questions if someone saw it on my screen. Information gathered, nothing revealed. My thumb hovered over the message field. The cursor blinked, waiting. What do you say to someone who asks about children she walked away from? I closed the message app without typing anything. Some problems announce themselves with alarms. Others send polite questions and wait to see if you'll open the door. I wasn't opening anything until I understood what I was dealing with. The beef finished browning. I drained the grease, added seasoning, let the familiar rhythm calm the spike of adrenaline her message had triggered. My hands stayed steady, movements methodical. Just another problem requiring diagnosis. "Serena," I called. "Dinner in 5. "Okay." Her voice came back, muffled through her door. I didn't tell her about the message. Didn't tell Felix. Didn't even call Denise yet, though part of me wanted to. But it was too soon. Might be nothing. Might be a moment of weakness that would pass as quickly as it arrived, except I knew better. After 7 years of complete silence, people don't reach out casually. This was either genuine remorse or something else entirely. And genuine remorse usually came with apologies, with acknowledgement of harm done, with recognition that time had passed and damage had been inflicted. This message had none of that. It had the casual entitlement of someone who believed they still had a right to information, to access, to the children they'd walked away from. When do you warn your children that their past is trying to become their present again? Not yet. Not until I understood what this was. I called the kids to dinner. Felix came running. Serena emerged from her room with earbuds in. We sat at the table in our usual spots, and I served tacos while Felix told a rambling story about a kid who'd brought a lizard for show and tell. Ordinary. Normal. The life I'd built for them, stable and secure. But my mind was already mapping possibilities. Colleen's text was reconnaissance. She was testing whether I'd respond, how quickly, with what tone. She was gathering her own data, building her own picture of what these 7 years had created in her absence. The question wasn't whether she'd try again. It was how many more attempts before she escalated to something more direct. A phone call, a visit, a confrontation. I'd been preparing for this possibility for years, not consciously, but the way you prepare for any potential failure in a system you're responsible for maintaining. You watch for warning signs. You stay alert. You don't wait for catastrophic failure before you start paying attention. The first cloud had appeared. The question was whether it would pass or break into storm. After dinner, after dishes were cleared and homework checked, Felix was in bed with his thumb in his mouth, the way he still did when tired. I stood in the kitchen and looked at my phone one more time. The message still sat there, delivered but unread by the sender. She'd see that I hadn't responded, would draw her own conclusions about what my silence meant. Good. Let her wonder. Let her second guess. Let her understand that the door she'd walked through 7 years ago had closed behind her, and breaking it down again wasn't going to be as easy as sending a casual text. I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed, leaving the phone on the counter. But I knew this wasn't over. This was reconnaissance, and reconnaissance always meant something larger was coming. 2 days later, the larger thing arrived. Saturday evening. I was in the bathroom washing my hands when I heard my phone buzz in the living room. Nothing unusual, phones buzz, but when I came back, Serena was frozen on the couch, homework spread around her. Her eyes locked on my phone screen like she'd seen something that couldn't be unseen. The screen had already gone dark by the time I reached the coffee table. I picked it up, unlocked it. Another message from CM. I know you saw my message. When I looked up, Serena's eyes were back on her textbook, but her hand shook slightly, turning the page. That tiny tremor, that's what told me she'd seen something. You okay, sweetheart? I kept my voice casual. You look pale. Just tired, she said, not looking up. Long week. The lie was smooth. Practiced. 16 years old, and already too good at hiding what she was feeling. I'd taught her that, probably. 7 years of being careful, of not showing Felix how worried I was about money, or exhaustion, or the 1,000 small catastrophes of single fatherhood. She'd learned to mirror that control back to me, but I knew my daughter. Something had shifted in the 30 seconds I'd been out of the room. I sat down in my chair, phone face down on the armrest, and pretended to read while watching her in my peripheral vision. Her shoulders were tense. Her eyes tracked across the same paragraph 3 times without turning the page. Whatever she'd seen on that screen, it had rattled her. The contact name. She must have seen CM when the message preview lit up. Every family keeps secrets, but some secrets are just love protecting itself before it knows what it's protecting against. I'd kept Colleen's messages from the kids because I didn't know yet what I was protecting them from. A moment of maternal nostalgia that would fade, a genuine attempt at reconnection, or something else entirely. Now Serena knew something. The question was what and how much. I'm going to bed early, she said, gathering her books with movements that were just slightly too controlled. Headache. Want some ibuprofen? Already took some. Night, Dad. She kissed my cheek on her way past, the same ritual we'd had since she was small. But there was something fragile in it tonight, like she was holding herself together through force of will. I listened to her footsteps on the stairs, heard her bedroom door close with a soft click. Then silence. I sat there for a long time, phone in my hand, trying to decide whether to follow her, to ask what she'd seen, what she was thinking, to break open whatever she was carrying alone. But she'd chosen not to tell me, and I had to respect that, even when every instinct said to protect her from whatever was happening behind that closed door. Children don't stop loving absent parents overnight. They write letters into the void until the void becomes familiar enough to call home. I'd watched Serena do that when she was younger, seen her sitting at her desk for hours, pen moving across paper, envelopes addressed to nowhere. I'd never asked what she wrote, never offered to mail them. They were hers to send or keep. Eventually she'd stopped. Somewhere around 13, the letters had ceased. I'd thought it meant she'd made peace with her mother's absence. Now I wondered if peace was the right word, or just acceptance that some doors stayed closed, no matter how hard you knocked. The house settled around me. Felix's soft snoring drifted down from upstairs. He'd fallen asleep an hour ago with his math homework still open on his bed. Serena's room stayed silent. No music, no movement. I checked my phone one more time. Colleen's second message glowed on the screen. "I know you saw my message." She was getting impatient. The reconnaissance phase was ending. Soon she'd escalate to something more direct, something I couldn't simply ignore by keeping my phone face down. And now Serena was caught in the middle of whatever this was, carrying knowledge she'd chosen not to share. What do you owe the person who gave you life, but not the years that followed? I didn't have an answer. Didn't know if Serena did either. Around 9:30, I heard her door open, footsteps to the bathroom, water running, then back to her room. Normal evening routine, surface completely calm. If I hadn't seen that tremor in her hand, that tension in her shoulders, I might have believed everything was fine. Around 10, I went upstairs to check on Felix. He was still asleep, homework abandoned, thumb not quite in his mouth, but close. I covered him with his blanket, closed his math book, turned off his lamp. Serena's door was closed. A thin line of light showed underneath. She was still awake. I stood there for a moment, hand raised to knock, to ask if she was okay, to break whatever silence we were both keeping. Instead, I went to my own room. Some conversations can't be forced. They have to arrive in their own time, when both people are ready to have them. Serena would tell me when she was ready, or she wouldn't. Either way, I had to trust that 7 years of being there, of showing up, of building a foundation of presence had earned me that trust in return. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone on the nightstand. Down the hall, my daughter was doing the same thing, lying awake, thinking about a woman who'd walked out of both our lives 7 years ago and was now trying to walk back in. Two people in the same house, watching for the same storm, keeping the same silence, but I didn't know that then. I just knew something had changed in my daughter's eyes when she'd seen those 2 letters on my phone screen. CM. 2 letters that had rewritten her entire evening in the space of a heartbeat. In the morning, she'd come down for breakfast with her usual smile, ask about the day's plans, act like nothing had happened, and I'd let her. Because sometimes protecting your children means giving them space to carry what they need to carry until they're ready to set it down. The silence lasted 4 days, then the surveillance began. By the 3rd morning, I spotted the silver Honda Accord parked across from Palmetto Elementary's west entrance. I stopped pretending it was coincidence. Monday, I'd noticed it without really noticing. Tuesday morning, same car, same location, and my mind flagged it the way maintenance training teaches you to flag patterns. Once is random, twice is worth watching. Wednesday morning, I drove past slowly enough to catch the plate. Florida tags, digits matching the pattern I'd half memorized 7 years ago. I parked my truck, walked Felix to his classroom. He chattered about volcanoes and baking soda. I made the right sounds while my eyes drifted toward the west entrance. "Dad, you forgot to drop me at the front," Felix said. "Taking a different route today, buddy." After I watched him disappear into his classroom, I circled back and exited on the west side. Walked casually toward the street, hands in pockets. 50 yards from the Accord, I could see through the windshield. Colleen sat in the driver's seat, coffee cup in the holder, eyes fixed on the school entrance. Watching the drop-off line, noting patterns, timing arrivals. Surveillance is a language. 3 days means intent. 3 hours means impulse. Colleen was speaking in paragraphs. She didn't see me. I kept walking, got in my truck, drove to work with my jaw tight. She wasn't just texting anymore. She was studying us, learning routines, mapping vulnerabilities, planning something. I made it through my shift on autopilot, my hands doing the work while my mind ran scenarios. By the time I got home at 6, I'd made a decision. I couldn't carry this alone anymore. Denise arrived around 9:30 in her scrubs from Miami General. She found me in the kitchen making her tea, green with honey, in the blue mug I kept specifically for her. Both kids were asleep. The house was quiet. "You've been quiet all evening," she said, leaning against the counter. "What's wrong?" I told her everything. The text a week ago. The second message. The car these past 3 mornings. Colleen watching from across the street. Denise set down her mug slowly, absorbing it with that particular pediatric nurse calm, steady during crisis because panicking helps no one. "How long have you been carrying this alone?" "Since the first text. I didn't want to worry you until I knew what it was. We're past that now." She pulled out a chair, sat. "Tell me what you need." The strongest partnerships don't announce themselves with drama. They reveal themselves in kitchen conversations at 10 p.m. when crisis arrives and neither person flinches. I sat. She hasn't approached directly, just watching, testing. "Do the kids know?" "Serena saw somethings on my phone Saturday. I think she figured it out." "Felix?" "Oblivious, thank God." "What's your instinct about her intent?" "She wants back in. But I don't know if it's genuine remorse or something else. Does it matter?" Denise's question was gentle but direct. Either way, she left. Either way, the kids built a life without her. She was right. The why didn't change the what. The kids already have their answer, Desmond. Denise's hand found mine across the table. Felix doesn't even remember her face, and Serena made peace with that absence years ago. What if Colleen tries to? Then we deal with it. Together. Like we've dealt with everything for 4 years. 4 years. We'd never defined what we were in official terms, never had the conversation about labels. But Denise had been there for midnight fevers and school conferences and 1,000 small crises. She'd earned her place through presence, not promises. What is a mother? The person who gives birth, or the person who shows up for 3,000 ordinary days in a row? "You're not worried?" I asked. Denise smiled, tired but certain. "Worried about what?" "That Felix will suddenly remember a woman he hasn't seen since he was 2. That Serena will choose someone who walked out over someone who stayed." She squeezed my hand. "I'm not competing with Colleen. There is no competition. The kids already chose. They chose 7 years ago when they stopped asking when she was coming back. They chose every morning you were there. They chose every time Felix called me Mom without thinking twice." The knot in my chest loosened. Not because the threat was gone, but because I wasn't facing it alone. "We should tell them soon," Denise said, Before she makes direct contact, give them agency. Agreed, but not tonight. Not tonight, but soon. We sat in the quiet kitchen, hands joined. Outside somewhere in Miami, Colleen sat in her car, planning her next move, mapping approaches, building whatever strategy she thought would get her back into lives she'd abandoned. But inside this house, the family was already whole. Denise's hand covered mine, warm, steady, absolutely sure. No trembling, no doubt. Whatever storm was coming, we'd face it as the unit we'd built over 4 years of shared routines and midnight emergencies. I thought about Serena lying awake down the hall, carrying her own knowledge in silence. About Felix sleeping with his thumb near his mouth, oblivious to the biological mother watching him from across a parking lot. About Colleen, somewhere in the darkness, believing she still had a right to what she'd walked away from. By week's end, watching from a distance wouldn't be enough for her anymore. But we'd be ready. The escalation came 3 days later, in broad daylight, with the confidence of someone who believed she still had rights. I was at the usual spot in Palmetto Elementary's pickup area when I saw Colleen step out of her Honda Accord across the lot. She didn't hesitate, didn't wave first, or wait for acknowledgement. Just started walking directly toward me, heels clicking against asphalt with the particular rhythm of someone who'd rehearsed this approach. 7 years compressed into 30 seconds of her crossing a parking lot, like nothing had changed at all. I stood beside my truck and waited. Felix was still inside, probably chatting with friends at his locker the way he always did after the final bell. Good. I wanted this conversation finished before he came out. Colleen reached me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 42 now, dressed like she'd come from an office. Slacks, blazer, professional. Event marketing consultant, if I remembered correctly from the life she'd built after walking out of ours. Desmond, she said, like we'd seen each other last week instead of 7 years ago. I was hoping we could talk. I didn't return the smile. About what? The kids. She glanced toward the school entrance. I'd like to take Felix for ice cream Thursday. What time works? Not hello. Not I'm sorry. Not I know I've been gone. Just logistics, delivered with the casual confidence of a parent coordinating custody arrangements. She spoke like she still had access, like 7 years of absence hadn't severed every assumption of parental authority. I let the silence stretch for 3 beats. Watched her smile start to waver. That won't be happening, I said. Her head tilted slightly, confusion replacing confidence. I'm just asking for an hour. Ice cream. I thought we could ease into. No. The word landed flat and final. Colleen's mouth opened, closed. She genuinely didn't understand the refusal. Had expected resistance maybe, negotiation certainly, but not a wall. Desmond, I know this is sudden, but I'm trying to what? Step back into their lives like you stepped out, on your schedule? I made mistakes. Her voice dropped, attempting sincerity. I know that, but I'm their mother. I have a right to. You have nothing. I kept my voice level, but each word carried weight. You left. You chose to leave. You don't get to choose when to come back. 30 feet away, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. Felix had emerged from the school entrance, backpack bouncing on his shoulders. He'd spotted my truck but had stopped when he saw me talking to someone. His confusion was visible even from this distance. The woman talking to Dad looked important, moved like someone who belonged, but Dad's posture said stranger. Colleen followed my glance, saw Felix, and her expression shifted into something that might have been genuine pain. He's gotten so big, she whispered. I didn't respond. Didn't tell her about the fevers I'd handled alone at 2 a.m., the homework struggles, the bedtime stories, the 1,000 small moments she'd missed by choice. I know Serena would want to see me, Colleen said, pulling her attention back. She's 16 now, old enough to decide for herself. That's when I felt the first flash of real anger, hot and sharp behind my sternum. You know nothing about what Serena wants. My voice dropped lower. Nothing. I thought about the weekend Serena had gone quiet after seeing that text. The way she'd carried something alone rather than talk to me about it. The 7 years of absence Serena had processed in ways Colleen would never understand, because she hadn't been there to witness them. Colleen's left hand tightened around her car keys. The fob edges dug white marks into her palm, a tell that her confidence was facade, that underneath she'd expected this to go differently. I'm still their mother, Desmond. Her voice carried an edge now, frustration breaking through. You can't just shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I met her eyes directly. You shut yourself out 7 years ago. I'm just maintaining the door you closed. That's not fair. A lot has changed in 7 years. The words came out flat, final. Conversation over. I'd said what needed saying, delivered the boundary that had been waiting 7 years to be drawn. Around us, the normal pickup chaos continued. Minivans circled for spots. Kids shouted about soccer practice. A teacher waved goodbye to her last student. The parking lot didn't care that 7 years of abandonment were colliding with 7 years of rebuilding in the space between two parked cars. Colleen stood there for another moment, mouth working like she was trying to find the right words to break through my wall. But there weren't any. This wasn't negotiation. This was reality, delivered without anger or drama. Just the simple truth that absence has consequences. This isn't over, she finally said. It's been over for 7 years. You're just realizing it now. She turned then, heels clicking back toward her Honda, with less confidence than when she'd approached. I watched her go, making sure she got in her car, making sure she wasn't going to circle back and try to approach Felix directly. That's when Felix's voice carried across the parking lot. Dad, who was that? He stood beside the jungle gym now, backpack properly zipped, watching Colleen's car with the mild curiosity of someone who'd witnessed his father talking to a stranger. Nothing more. No recognition. No spark of memory. The question hung in the air between us. I saw Colleen freeze with her hand on the car door. Saw her head turn slightly, just enough to hear but not enough to look back. Nobody important, I called to Felix. Come on, buddy, let's go home. Felix ran toward me, already chattering about something that happened at recess. I put my hand on his shoulder, guided him toward the truck. Didn't look back at the woman sitting in the Honda Accord, realizing that her son, her own son, didn't recognize her face. She wasn't negotiating access anymore. She was negotiating introduction to strangers who happened to share her DNA. I told him she was nobody important. The lie tasted bitter, but Felix accepted it the way 9-year-olds accept most things from parents they trust completely. That trust was precisely what made the evening conversation so difficult. After dinner, after dishes were cleared and homework was checked, I gathered both kids in the living room. The tone in my voice must have signaled something, 'cause Felix sat down immediately on the couch, close to me, and Serena's shoulders tensed before I'd even started speaking. I need to talk to you both about something important, I said, settling into my chair across from them. Felix's eyes went wide. Did I do something wrong? No, buddy. Nothing like that. I kept my voice calm, measured. This isn't about either of you. It's about someone from our past. Serena sat perfectly still. Too still. Her hands were folded in her lap, jaw tight, eyes fixed on me with an intensity that told me she already knew what was coming. She'd been waiting for this conversation since Saturday night, when she'd seen those 2 letters on my phone screen. I took a breath. 7 years of preparation, and I still didn't know the right words. Your biological mother, Colleen, is back in Miami, I said, using precise language deliberately. She wants to see you both. The silence that followed had weight. Felix's confusion was visible, his head tilting slightly like he was trying to translate words that didn't quite make sense. Serena said nothing, but her jaw clenched tighter. "Who's Colleen?" Felix asked. Serena already knows something. Her body language screamed it the moment I said biological mother. But she's chosen not to share that knowledge with her brother. Chosen to let me be the one to explain. "She's the woman who gave birth to you and Serena," I said carefully. "She left when you were 2 years old. You don't remember her." Felix processed this, his young mind working through the logic. "So she's like a relative?" "She's your biological mother," I repeated. "But she hasn't been part of our lives for 7 years. Oh." Felix looked at Serena, then back at me, still trying to fit this information into his understanding of the world. "Is she nice?" The question caught me off guard. Of all the things he could have asked, where had she been? Why did she leave? Why was she coming back now? He wanted to know if she was nice. "I don't know who she is anymore," I said honestly. "People change in 7 years. Serena finally spoke, her voice quiet but controlled. "What does she want?" "To see you. To reconnect." I paused. "But here's what's important. This is your choice. Not mine, not hers. Yours." I was handing them a choice most fathers would keep locked in their own hands, trusting 9 and 16 to carry weight meant for adults. But I'd spent 7 years teaching them to think for themselves, to trust their own judgment. I wasn't going to undermine that now by making decisions for them. "You can see her if you want to," I continued. "You can say no if you want to. You can take time to think about it. There's no right answer here, and whatever you decide, I'll support it completely." "Do you want us to see her?" Serena asked, watching my face carefully. "What I want doesn't matter. This is about what you want. But you must have an opinion. My opinion is that you're old enough to make your own decisions about who you let into your lives." I leaned forward, hands clasped between my knees. "I won't lie to you. She left us. She made that choice. But if you want to give her a chance to explain that, if you're curious, if you want closure, or if you just want to meet her once to see how you feel, any of those reasons are valid." Serena nodded slowly, still processing. Felix looked between us, clearly sensing this was more complicated than his 9-year-old framework could easily accommodate. "I don't understand," he said finally. "Why would she leave?" "I don't know, buddy. You'd have to ask her that." "But—" Felix's face scrunched in concentration. "If she's my biological mother, why don't I remember her? You were very young when she left. Who took care of me after she left?" "I did." "Just you?" "For a few years, yes. Then Denise started helping." Felix's face held genuine confusion, not recognition. The face of a child who has never missed what he never had. To him, Mom was Denise, singular, present, constant. The concept of biological mother as a separate entity didn't fit into the world he'd built over 9 years. "Is she like—" Felix struggled for the right comparison. "Like how Tommy has 2 dads because his parents divorced and his mom got married again?" "Not quite. You only have 1 dad, but you have 2 women who could be called mothers, the one who gave birth to you, and the one who's been there for you since you were 5. "Denise," Felix said immediately. "Yes, Denise. But Denise is Mom." "I know, buddy. So this Colleen person—" Felix's forehead wrinkled. "What am I supposed to call her?" The question was so innocent, so practical, and it cut right to the heart of the problem. Colleen wanted to reclaim a title that Felix had already given to someone else. Not because anyone had told him to, not because of custody arrangements or legal definitions, but because Denise had simply shown up. For 4 years, every day. "You call her whatever feels right to you," I said. "If you decide to meet her." Felix thought about this for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would have destroyed Colleen if she'd been there to hear it. But, Mom, who? 2 words. Innocent confusion. No malice, no rejection. Just a 9-year-old trying to understand why he needed a second person to fill a role that was already occupied. Serena's sharp inhale told me she understood the weight of what Felix had just said. Understood that our brother, her brother, didn't have a hole in his life where Colleen used to be. He had a complete family. Denise wasn't filling a gap. She was the structure itself. The question hung in the quiet living room, unanswered, because there was no good answer. To Felix, Colleen wasn't an absent mother returning. She was a stranger trying to claim a title that already belonged to someone else. I didn't have an answer for Felix's question. Neither did Serena. We sat in that silence for a moment before I sent them both to bed, the weight of Colleen's return settling over the house like fog. 2 hours later, I heard crying through Serena's closed bedroom door. She'd spent 7 years not crying over the mother who left. 7 years of careful control, of practiced calm, of moving forward without looking back. Tonight, that discipline shattered completely. I stood in the hallway, listening to muffled sobs, debating whether to knock or give her space. At 16, she had a right to privacy, to grief she didn't want witnessed. But she was still my daughter, and some hurts were too heavy to carry alone. I knocked softly, waited. The crying stopped, replaced by silence that felt deliberate. Not permission, but not refusal either. I opened the door slowly. Serena sat on her bed, back against the headboard, knees pulled to her chest. Her face was blotchy, eyes red, and scattered across her comforter were sheets of notebook paper, yellowed at the edges, covered in handwriting that had evolved from childish loops to teenage precision over multiple years. Letters, dozens of them. "Can I come in?" I asked, though I was already halfway through the door. She nodded, not looking at me. I sat on the edge of her bed, careful not to disturb the papers. Close enough to offer presence, far enough to give her space. The letters in her hands, 9-year-old handwriting, 12-year-old desperation, looked like evidence of something she'd kept hidden for years. "I didn't know you'd written to her," I said quietly. Serena's laugh was bitter. "I didn't send them. Never did. Just wrote them. Like she was going to magically know I needed her." She picked up one of the letters, read a line, then dropped it back onto the pile with disgust. "Dear Mom, I hope you're okay. I miss you. Love, Serena, age 9. Her voice broke. "I was so stupid." "No," I said firmly. "You were a child who loved her mother. She didn't deserve it. Any of it." Serena gestured at the letters. 3 years I wrote these. 3 years hoping she'd come back, and she never did. Not once. I stayed quiet. Didn't try to defend Colleen. Didn't try to explain the unexplainable. Just sat with my daughter while she held evidence of her own younger self's hope and felt betrayed by it. "Why did I write these?" she whispered. "Why did I hope she'd come back?" "Because you loved her. Because children are wired to love their parents, even when those parents don't earn it." Serena's shoulders shook with fresh tears. I moved closer, put my arm around her, and she leaned into me the way she used to when she was small, and the world felt too big. We sat like that for several minutes. I didn't fill the quiet with solutions or reassurance. Didn't tell her what to feel or how to process this. Just stayed present while she cried for the mother she'd wanted and the girl she'd been who had wanted so desperately to matter enough to bring that mother home. Desmond's silence is a gift most fathers can't give, the absence of pressure disguised as wisdom. I'd learned it through 7 years of single fatherhood, Sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be there without demanding anything in return. Serena's crying slowed gradually, settling into occasional hitches of breath. She was testing whether I'd push her to decide something, to feel a certain way, to resolve it quickly and move on. I didn't. I don't know if I should hate her, she finally whispered, voice breaking on the word hate. I stayed quiet, didn't rush to fill the space with answers I didn't have. Part of me does, Serena continued. Hates her for leaving, for not calling, for making me write these stupid letters for 3 years. She picked up another page, scanned it, dropped it. But part of me still, I don't know. Part of me wanted her to come back, for years. And now she has, and I'm just angry that I still care. Does that make me stupid? She looked at me directly for the first time since I'd entered. That I wanted her? That I wrote her for 3 years like she was going to magically appear? No, I said. It makes you human. I should hate her. She deserves it. Maybe. Maybe not. But what someone deserves and what you actually feel don't always line up. Serena wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do I do, Dad? Whatever feels right to you. I pulled her closer. You don't have to decide tonight. Or tomorrow. Or ever, if you don't want to. But she's waiting for an answer. Let her wait. She's been gone 7 years. She can wait a few more days while you figure out what you want. She doesn't need me to fix this. She needs me to let her break without demanding she reassemble immediately. Needs permission to hold contradictory feelings. Love and hate, hope and anger, longing and rejection, all at the same time without forcing them into neat resolution. I wrote her for 3 years, Serena said again, quieter now. And she never knew, never cared. No, I agreed. She didn't. And now she wants back in. Like 7 years of not caring doesn't matter. That's up to you to decide. Whether it matters enough to say no, or whether you're curious enough to say yes, or whether you want to sit with it longer before deciding anything at all. Serena's breathing had steadied, tears slowing to occasional tracks down her cheeks. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and I felt the tension in her body start to ease. Can I tell you something? She asked. Always. I'm glad she left. The words hung in the air, shocking in their honesty, because if she hadn't, I wouldn't have had you. Just you. And that was better. Better than having her. My throat tightened. Serena, I mean it. You were there, every day. She never was. I pulled her closer, kissed the top of her head. I love you, sweetheart. I love you too. We sat together in silence. She hadn't decided anything. Not whether to see Colleen, not whether to forgive, not whether hate was earned. But for tonight, she didn't have to. Serena still hadn't decided by Saturday morning when I drove Felix to Matheson Hammock Park for the meeting Colleen had requested. I'd agreed after 3 days of increasingly desperate texts for just 15 minutes with Felix, supervised, in public, neutral ground. I set the terms. If Felix wanted to leave at any point, we left. Colleen was already there when we pulled into the lot, sitting on a bench near the water, checking her phone, looking up every few seconds. She'd arrived early, probably rehearsing what to say to a 9-year-old who shared her DNA but nothing else. Felix walked close to my side across the grass. My hand rested on his shoulder, protective, steadying. Remember, I said quietly, you can leave whenever you want. Just look at me and I'll be right there. Okay, Felix said, voice small. Colleen stood when she saw us, smoothing her shirt, smile too bright, too eager. Hi, Felix, she called across 20 feet of park lawn. Hello, Felix said, polite and careful. I guided him to the bench, then stepped back. I'll be right over there if you need me, I said, gesturing to a spot 30 feet away where I could see and hear everything. Felix sat on the far end of the bench from Colleen. The physical distance, 2 feet of weathered wood, spoke volumes. I moved to my spot, leaned against a tree, and watched. Colleen launched into her prepared script. "So, Felix, your dad tells me you're in 3rd grade now. What's your favorite subject in school?" Felix's answers were textbook polite, the same tone he'd use with a grocery store cashier asking about his day. "Science. We're doing plants right now." "Oh, I used to love science too when I was—" But Felix's eyes had already drifted toward the playground behind them. Colleen pulled out more questions. Hobbies, friends, teachers. Felix answered each briefly, factually, giving her nothing to build on. Just information delivered with the courtesy I'd taught him to show to adults. 7 minutes in, Colleen reached into her bag and produced a wrapped package. "I brought you something," she said, handing it over. Felix took it carefully, said thank you, automatically, then unwrapped it. A book about soccer. Bright cover, professional players. "I thought you might like this," Colleen said. "Do you play soccer?" "No," Felix said. "I do swimming." The soccer book sits unopened between them, physical proof that Colleen is guessing at her own child. "Oh." Colleen's smile faltered. "Well, maybe you'll want to try soccer sometime." "Maybe," Felix said, but the word carried no conviction. Silence stretched. Colleen scrambled for another topic. "What about food? Do you have a favorite?" Felix brightened slightly. "Mom makes really good blueberry pancakes on Saturdays." Colleen's face went still. "That sounds nice," she said after a pause. Felix didn't notice her reaction. Didn't catch that he'd called Denise Mom without qualification. Didn't start to correct himself because there was nothing to correct. He'd meant exactly what he'd said. I watched Colleen absorb that truth. Her son had a mother. It just wasn't her. 10 minutes had passed. Felix was fidgeting now, shifting weight, glancing toward me every 30 seconds. The book sat between them, still unopened. Colleen was running out of prepared questions. "Would you like to go see the playground?" she asked. Felix glanced at me, then back at her. "I'm okay," he said politely. 15 minutes. The exact length of time it takes for hope to suffocate under the weight of reality. Felix fidgeted with the book's corner, folding and unfolding the same page. Then he looked directly at Colleen and asked the question that would end it. "Can we go home now?" Not angry, not punishing, just genuine discomfort from a 9-year-old who'd spent 15 minutes making polite conversation with a friendly stranger and had reached his social limit. Colleen's voice cracked. "Of course, if that's what you want." "Thank you for the book," Felix said, standing and tucking it politely under his arm because I'd taught him not to leave gifts behind even if he didn't want them. He walked toward me without looking back, without the reluctance of a child being torn from someone he cared about. Just relief that the awkward obligation was over. I caught his hand as he reached me, felt his fingers squeeze mine with the particular grip that meant, "Get me out of here." We started walking toward the parking lot. Behind us, Colleen sat on the bench alone, watching her son leave with the complete absence of distress. The devastation wasn't in what Felix had said. He'd been perfectly polite, perfectly kind. The devastation was in how unburdened he was by leaving her. No tears, no backward glances, no second thoughts. Just a 9-year-old relieved to be going home with his father, carrying a soccer book he'd never read, having fulfilled his obligation to be polite to the stranger his dad had asked him to meet. As we reached the truck, Felix looked up at me. "Do I have to do that again?" "Only if you want to." I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. "I don't want to." "Then you don't have to." He nodded, satisfied, and climbed into the truck. I looked back once before getting in. Colleen was still on the bench, hands in her lap, staring at the space where Felix had been sitting. Her gentle approach had failed completely, and we both knew it. Denise showed me the text Thursday morning, while Felix was brushing his teeth upstairs. Her phone screen glowed between us at the kitchen counter. Coffee this week? Just you and me. I think we should talk. See, you don't have to go, I said. I know. She set the phone down, reached for her coffee mug. But I'm going to. She met Colleen Saturday afternoon at a cafe near Miami General Hospital, neutral territory neither of them had claimed. When Denise came home 2 hours later, she found me at the dining table sorting through Felix's homework folder, and she told me everything. Colleen had arrived first, claimed a corner table, ordered 2 lattes before Denise walked in. The assumption of hospitality, Denise said, like this was her invitation to extend. She looked good, Denise told me, her voice steady and clinical. Hair shorter than in the photo, expensive watch. She smiled when I sat down, that kind of smile people use in business meetings. Colleen had opened with pleasantries, weather, traffic, the cafe's cold brew, before pivoting. She appreciated everything Denise had done for the kids. Truly. She knew how hard it must have been, stepping in when things fell apart. But now that she was back, now that she was stable and ready, she hoped Denise would understand that the children needed space to reconnect with their actual mother. She used that word, Denise said. Actual. I felt my jaw tighten. What did you say? I asked her what she meant by space. Denise's fingers traced the rim of her water glass. She said maybe I could step back for a while. Not disappear, just reduce my presence. Give her room to rebuild what she'd lost. The air in our dining room felt thin. Outside, a neighbor's sprinkler system clicked on, the rhythmic chit-chit-chit absurdly normal. She wasn't asking me to earn a relationship with them, Denise continued. She was asking me to surrender the one I already have so she could take my place. Jesus, I whispered. Denise met my eyes. I told her I didn't take her place. I told her she left it empty 7 years ago and I filled it because someone had to. I told her Serena was 11 when she learned to buy groceries because I taught her how to budget. Felix was 3 when he learned his shapes, and I was the one holding the flashcards. I didn't step in. I showed up. And I'm not stepping back now because she's decided she's ready. My throat burned. How did she react? She cried. Denise's laugh was bitter and small. Said I didn't understand what she'd been through. Said I couldn't possibly know how hard it was to lose yourself and find your way back. Then she left cash on the table for both lattes and walked out. I reached across the table, took Denise's hand. Her fingers were cold. I'm not going anywhere, she said quietly. I don't care what she asks. Good, I managed, because neither am I. But Colleen's return was spreading through our lives like a stain we couldn't contain. Felix, who'd been quiet since the park meeting, grew quieter. He picked at dinner, forgot his backpack twice in 1 week, stopped asking about weekend plans. Serena watched him with the same haunted worry I felt, but didn't name. Then, Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed during a shift inspection at the hangar. Email notification. Sender. Adrienne Henderson, Palmetto Elementary. I didn't open it immediately. I was standing on the tarmac at Miami International, checking a maintenance log between flights, and Ms. Henderson, the school counselor, sharp-eyed and kind, the type who noticed when kids needed extra encouragement, usually sent updates about class projects or field trip permission slips. It could wait. But when I got back to the truck and sat behind the wheel, the subject line pulled at me. Quick check-in about Felix. I opened it. Mr. Garrett, I wanted to reach out because I've noticed some changes in Felix over the past week or so. He's always been one of my most engaged students, eager to participate, quick to help classmates, first hand up during discussion. But lately, he seems withdrawn. He's been distracted during lessons, And yesterday, during free reading time, I found him staring out the window instead of working on his book report. This morning, he didn't turn in his math homework, which isn't like him at all. When I asked if everything was okay, he said yes, but he wouldn't make eye contact. I know every child has off days, and I don't want to overreact. But Felix's change in behavior has been noticeable enough that I wanted to loop you in. If there's anything happening at home that might be affecting him, or if there's any way I can support him at school, please let me know. I'm here if you'd like to talk. Best, Adrienne Henderson. I read it twice. Then a third time, the words blurring slightly in the truck's dim interior. The afternoon sun slanted through the windshield, hot and accusing. Colleen's return wasn't just disrupting our family anymore. It was visible now. Measurable. A counselor I respected was watching my 9-year-old son withdraw into himself, and she was concerned enough to document it. I set the phone on the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel, staring at the quiet suburban street ahead. Somewhere across town, Colleen was probably planning her next move, convinced she was fighting for her children. But Felix wasn't fighting. He was disappearing, and I had no idea how to pull him back. I'd replied to Ms. Henderson's email that same evening, thanked her for reaching out, and scheduled the conference for Thursday at 3. That gave me a week to watch Felix more closely, the way he pushed food around his plate, the way he answered questions with single words, the way he'd stopped asking about weekend plans. Now it was Thursday morning, and we were all pretending it was ordinary. 7 o'clock, kitchen table. Denise at the stove flipping pancakes, the Thursday tradition she'd started 3 years ago, when Felix announced pancakes were his favorite breakfast food in the entire world. The smell of butter and vanilla filled the room, warm and sweet, the kind of smell that should make everything feel safe. Felix sat at his usual spot, fork in hand, cutting a pancake into precise squares. He ate mechanically, chewing each bite the same number of times. No chatter about his science project or the funny thing that happened at recess. Just quiet, methodical eating. Serena scrolled through her phone across from him, thumb flicking upward in that hypnotic rhythm teenagers master. Half present, half elsewhere. She'd showered early, dressed carefully, more effort than a regular Thursday required. Blueberries or chocolate chips, Felix? Denise asked, glancing back from the stove. Blueberries, Felix said. His voice was small. I sipped my coffee, watching them over the rim of my mug. Everyone in their roles. Everyone performing normalcy. But the air felt different, tighter, like the pressure change before a storm. Big test today? I asked Serena. She looked up, blinked. Just regular Thursday, but nothing pancakes on the table, then wiped her hands on a towel. Don't forget, she said, her tone casual but her eyes meeting mine. Parent conference at 3 today. Felix's shoulders tensed, just slightly, but I caught it. The fork paused mid-cut. Just a routine check-in, buddy, I said, keeping my voice easy. Nothing to worry about. Okay, Felix said quietly. He didn't look up. Serena glanced between us, reading the subtext the way she always did. She knew why the conference was happening. She'd been watching Felix withdraw too, watching him carry weight none of us could lift for him. Felix's silence wasn't sullen or defiant. It was the quiet of a child carrying something too heavy to name. Confusion and loyalty and loss all tangled together, and no vocabulary at 9 years old to sort it out. Denise returned to the stove, flipped 2 more pancakes. The normalcy we were all performing was fragile theater. Felix pretending he was fine. Serena pretending she wasn't hyper-aware of every shift in the house. Me pretending I wasn't watching them both with the heightened vigilance of a father who knew his family was under siege. And Denise, steady as always, pretending Thursday pancakes could hold us together. Serena stood, grabbed her backpack from the chair. I'll be home around 5. Group project. Need a ride? I asked. Mara's mom is dropping us off. I nodded. But I'd noticed the pattern. 3 after-school activities this week alone. Study group Monday, volleyball practice Wednesday, now project work Thursday. Serena was strategically avoiding home, timing her schedule to miss the hours when Colleen might show up unannounced. Staying anywhere but the place where her biological mother could appear and fracture the fragile peace we'd built. She kissed Denise on the cheek, waved at Felix. See you guys later. The front door closed behind her, and the kitchen felt smaller. Felix finished his pancakes, carried his plate to the sink without being asked. Good kid. Responsible. The kind of child who followed rules because it made the adults around him feel better, even when his own world was falling apart. Ready for school? I asked. Yeah. I grabbed my keys, checked the time. 7:28. The bus came at 7:32, 4 minutes that had become ritual. I walked Felix to the stop every morning, had since kindergarten, would probably keep doing it until he told me to stop. We stepped outside into humid Miami air, the sun already bright and unforgiving. The neighbor's sprinkler system hissed across the lawn 2 houses down. A car passed, bass thumping. Ordinary Thursday sounds. Felix's hand found mine as we walked. He was 9 now, old enough that hand-holding at the bus stop wasn't cool anymore, but he reached for me anyway. His palm was small and warm, fingers curling around mine with a grip that felt like trust. I held on tighter than usual. He didn't pull away. At the corner, we stopped. 2 other kids waited. The Martinez twins from 3 houses down, comparing something on their phones. Felix stood close to me, his backpack straps tight across his shoulders. Dad, he said quietly, is everything okay? The question landed in my chest like a stone. How do you tell your 9-year-old son that everything is not okay? That his mother, a woman he doesn't remember, has returned and wants to reclaim a place she abandoned, and that you have no idea how to protect him from the fallout. Everything's fine, buddy, I said. The lie tasted bitter. Have a good day. You too. The bus rounded the corner, yellow and loud, brakes squealing as it pulled up. The doors opened. Felix climbed the steps, turned back once, waved. I waved back. From the porch, Denise stood with her coffee mug, watching. She'd followed us out, stayed far enough to give us our moment, but close enough to anchor us both. Our eyes met across the lawn. She nodded once, steady, calm, united. The message was clear. Whatever happens today, whatever's next, we handle it together. The bus pulled away. Felix's face appeared in a window 3 rows back, small and serious. He waved. I raised my hand. Then the bus turned the corner, and he was gone. I stood there longer than necessary, hand still raised, watching the empty street. The Martinez twins' mother had already gone back inside. The sprinkler kept its rhythm. The sun climbed higher, but something in my gut twisted. The same instinct I'd learned to trust over 7 years of single fatherhood. The feeling I got the morning Colleen left. The morning before every major shift. Pattern recognition, not paranoia. The air had changed. Today something would break. I just didn't know what yet. By 3 o'clock I knew my instinct hadn't been wrong. Palmetto Elementary's multi-purpose room filled with the reliable Thursday afternoon crowd. Parents who showed up. Teachers who cared. Coffee brewing in the corner. Normalcy humming along until it doesn't. Denise and I walked in together, her hand briefly on my back as we navigated through arriving families. Casual intimacy of an established couple. Ms. Henderson stood near the projector greeting parents. When she saw us, she waved. Desmond, Denise, glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it, Denise said. Felix has been talking about the science unit all week. Ms. Henderson's expression flickered, concern beneath professional friendliness. I'll catch up with you both after the presentation. We moved toward our usual seats. Fourth row, left side. The same spots we'd occupied for 3 years of curriculum nights and science fairs. I'd started coming alone when Felix entered kindergarten. Denise joined me the year she moved in. Now these chairs felt like assigned territory. Desmond, Denise! Mrs. Bryant called from behind us. PTA volunteer who remembered everyone's names. Still have that blueberry pancake recipe from last year's bake sale? I'll email it to you tonight, Denise promised. You're a lifesaver. My kids ask for those every weekend. 3 years of blueberry pancake recipes and science fair volunteering had built something Colleen couldn't dismantle with biology alone. Community recognition. The accumulated weight of showing up. We settled into our seats. Mr. Russell, Felix's classmate's father, leaned over from behind. How's Felix doing? He asked quietly. My son mentioned he's been quiet lately. Even other kids were noticing. He's okay, I said. Just working through some things. Mr. Russell nodded. Jacob really looks up to him. Smart kid you've got. The room filled steadily. 30 parents, maybe 35. Teachers distributed handouts. The coffee maker gurgled. Everything ordinary. The principal stepped to the front, tapped the microphone. Thank you all for coming. We're excited to share curriculum updates for next year. New math program. Expanded science resources. Parents took notes, asked questions about supply lists. Ms. Henderson took over 15 minutes in, advancing slides about third-grade changes on behalf of the teaching team. We'll be piloting a new hands-on science curriculum starting this fall, she explained. Students will engage in weekly experiments using materials provided by the school. Will that require additional materials from home? A parent asked. No, all supplies provided. The multi-purpose room hummed with the particular warmth of parents investing in their children's futures. It was a club Colleen had left voluntarily 7 years ago, when she walked out on bedtime routines and permission slips and the unglamorous work of actually raising kids. But my attention drifted. The same instinct from this morning prickled at the back of my neck. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but my body recognized something approaching. Denise noticed my shift. Her hand found mine between the chairs, squeezed once. Quiet question. I squeezed back. Ms. Henderson continued talking. Literacy benchmarks, field trip possibilities, volunteer opportunities. Parents scribbled notes. Someone's phone buzzed and was silenced. Everything normal. Except it wasn't. I'd felt this before. The morning Colleen left. The night Denise told me her ex had died. The afternoon. Felix fell off the jungle gym in first grade, and I got the call from the school nurse. My body keeping score of disasters before my brain caught up. 20 minutes into the presentation, the multipurpose room door opened. The creak cut through curriculum talk like an alarm bell. Institutional hinges announcing interruption. Every head turned. Reflex of community gathering disrupted. Parents conditioned to notice when something breaks the expected rhythm. A woman stood in the doorway. She scanned the room with deliberate slowness, eyes moving across rows of folding chairs, past the projector screen, over clusters of families, looking for someone. Her gaze found me, found Denise beside me, our hands still touching. Colleen Morgan stepped inside. She looked exactly like she had at the park 2 weeks ago. Put together, careful, wearing confidence like armor. But her presence here, now, in this room full of parents who knew me and Denise as a unit, shifted everything. The room didn't go silent. It went muted. 35 parents registering the stranger who'd just walked into their community space mid-presentation, instinctively measuring whether this was someone lost or something else entirely. Ms. Henderson paused at the projector, hand frozen on the remote, professional smile faltering as she followed everyone's attention to the doorway. Colleen's eyes stayed locked on mine. Not angry, not desperate, determined. Claiming space she thought belonged to her. Denise's hand tightened around mine. I'd known something would break today. My instinct had warned me this morning at the bus stop, watching Felix's face disappear in the school bus window. This was it. Colleen had shifted tactics. Private negotiations hadn't worked. Not the park meeting where Felix asked to leave after 15 minutes. Not the coffee shop where Denise refused to step back. So now she was making this public. Appearing at a community event where we sat together in seats we'd occupied for 3 years, forcing confrontation before witnesses who saw us as family. The air in the multi-purpose room felt thin. Ms. Henderson cleared her throat, trying to redirect. "I'm sorry. Can I help you find—" But Colleen wasn't looking at her. She was looking at me, walking forward down the center aisle between folding chairs, past parents who shifted slightly to let her through, their faces curious and confused. She stopped at our row. "Hello, Desmond," she said quietly. Then her eyes moved to Denise. Denise. 35 parents watched, waiting. Colleen didn't wait for a response. She turned away from our row and walked toward the front of the room where Ms. Henderson stood frozen at the projector, hand still gripping the remote. Purposeful stride. Confident smile. She passed us without acknowledgement, like we were strangers in her audience rather than the people who'd raised her children for 7 years. My jaw tightened. Denise's hand found mine again, squeezed hard. Colleen stopped 3 feet from Ms. Henderson, close enough that the counselor had to tilt her head back slightly to maintain eye contact. The power dynamic was deliberate, Colleen claiming space, forcing attention. "Ms. Henderson," Colleen said, her voice carrying through the quiet room with practiced clarity. "I'm Colleen Morgan, Felix Garrett's mother." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward. Ms. Henderson's confusion was visible. The slight parting of her lips, the quick glance toward me and Denise in the 4th row, the hesitation before speaking. Hello," she managed. Colleen's smile widened. "I apologize for interrupting your presentation, but I wanted to introduce myself to you and the parent community. I know many of you know my ex-husband Desmond and his partner." She gestured vaguely towards our row without looking at us. "I've been away for some time, but I'm back now, and I'm looking forward to being involved in my son's education." The strategy was brilliant and cruel. Claim the title of mother publicly, before witnesses, and force me to either accept it silently or contradict her and look like I was denying her parental rights. Make herself the sympathetic figure, the mother returning to her child, and paint me as the obstacle. Murmurs spread through the rows. Parents shifting in their seats, glancing at each other, at us, at Colleen. Confusion rippling through the community. "Wait," someone whispered behind me. "Felix's mother? I thought Desmond and Denise have always been—" Another voice, quieter. Mrs. Bryant, 2 rows up, turned fully around in her seat, staring at me with questions written across her face. Mr. Russell beside her looked equally bewildered. These were people who'd seen me and Denise at every school event for 3 years. People who'd watched us parent together, who knew Felix called Denise Mom, who'd never questioned our family configuration because we showed up. Now Colleen was rewriting the narrative in real time, and they didn't know which story to believe. 35 parents watching family implosion unfold before them. Curriculum presentation forgotten, coffee growing cold on the side table. I felt my body move before my brain caught up. Muscles tensing, weight shifting forward. I was going to stand, going to speak, going to set the record straight in front of everyone. Denise's hand tightened on my arm, steadying, warning. Colleen saw the movement. Her eyes flicked toward me, and her smile changed, became sharper, more no. She'd gotten what she wanted. She was forcing my hand publicly, and either way I responded, she won something. A chair scraped against linoleum at the back of the room. Loud, sudden. Every head turned. Serena stood in the last row, backpack still on the seat beside her. I hadn't even known she was here. She'd said group project at 5, but she must have come to the meeting first, slipped in late, sat where I wouldn't notice. 16 years old, 5'6", her mother's dark hair and my stubborn jaw. Calm, composed. But her hands were steady at her sides in a way that meant she was holding something tight inside. The room's attention shifted completely. No one had expected the teenager to move. This was adult business, parent conflict, school politics. Children didn't intervene, but Serena wasn't a child anymore. Not really. Colleen's confident expression faltered. Just slightly. Just enough. Serena's voice cut through the silence, clear and firm. Not angry, not loud, just absolutely certain. This isn't the place. 4 words, quiet authority that made adults freeze. Ms. Henderson's hand hovered near her phone. Mrs. Bryant's mouth opened slightly. Mr. Russell sat completely still. Serena looked directly at Colleen, and I recognized the expression. The same one I'd worn countless times when setting boundaries with supervisors who cut corners or airlines that demanded the impossible. "Whatever you need to say, you don't do it here," Serena continued, each word deliberate and weighted. Not in front of everyone. Not during a school meeting. Not like this. Colleen stared at her daughter, the girl she'd left at 9 years old, now nearly grown, standing in the back of a multi-purpose room, telling her biological mother no in front of 35 witnesses. "If you want to talk," Serena said, "you contact Dad. Not this." Serena's voice carried a weight no 16-year-old should have to lift. The authority of a child forced to parent her own parent. To set boundaries adults should have maintained. To protect her family, because the person who should have protected her had walked away. Mid-story, CTA. She'd said her piece. Colleen hadn't said a word back yet. "Are you still with me?" Comment A if you think I should have stood up instead of Serena, or B if staying quiet was right. Add your reason in exactly 6 words. Quick note. What follows includes some recreated details for emotional impact. But the core truth is what matters. Colleen's mouth opened, closed. No words came. She'd prepared for my anger. For Denise's boundaries. For community judgment, maybe. Or Ms. Henderson's professional intervention. But not this. Not her daughter's public shutdown. Not rejection delivered with calm certainty by the girl who used to wait by the window asking when mommy would come home. The confident smile had shattered completely. Colleen stood at the front of the room, spotlight she'd claimed now burning too bright, and she had no script for this moment. Ms. Henderson took a small step forward, finally finding her role. "Perhaps we should—" But Serena was already picking up her backpack, already moving toward the door. She didn't look at me or Denise, didn't wait for permission or approval, just walked out with the same quiet certainty she'd spoken with. The multi-purpose room held its breath. Colleen stood frozen at the front, hand half raised like she might call after Serena, but didn't know what words to use. 35 parents sat motionless, witnesses to something that felt too raw and private to have unfolded in institutional lighting and folding chairs. And I remained in this 4th row beside Denise, our hands still clasped, watching my 16-year-old daughter walk out the door. She'd just done what I'd been about to do myself, protecting our family from someone who'd forfeited the right to disrupt it. I didn't see what happened after Colleen walked out of that meeting. I only learned the shape of it weeks later, in the counseling office, when she finally said out loud what those hours alone must have looked like. But I've turned it over enough times since then that I can picture it now, the way you picture a room you've only ever heard described. She would have sat in her Honda Accord in the elementary school parking lot, engine running, hands shaking on the steering wheel, replaying our daughter's public rejection on loop. "This isn't the place." 4 words. Serena's voice calm and certain. 35 parents watching. Ms. Henderson frozen. Denise and I sitting together while Colleen stood alone at the front. She'd have walked out with whatever dignity she could scrape together, hands trembling, breath coming short and fast. The drive from Coral Gables to Brickell would have passed in silence. No radio, no music, just highway traffic and air conditioning blowing cold. Serena's expression replaying the whole way, not angry, just firm. The girl she'd left at 9 years old, telling her biological mother no, in front of everyone. Her daughter had spoken to her like she was nobody. Like 7 years of absence had erased every claim biology might have given her. The humiliation would have sat raw and fresh in her chest. By the time she reached her Brickell apartment, the 1-bedroom she'd been renting since coming back to Miami, there would have been nothing waiting for her. Beige walls, rental furniture, nothing on the walls, no photos, nothing that felt like home. She'd thought coming back would fix things. Thought showing up, claiming her space as mother, would make the kids remember they belonged to her first. Instead, Felix had asked to leave after 15 minutes. Serena had shut her down in front of the entire school community. And I kept showing up, solid and steady, with Denise beside me. She told us later that she sat alone in that apartment for hours that evening, turning it over. No one to call. No one who'd have answered if she had. The relationship that brought her back to Miami in the first place had already ended by then, though we wouldn't learn that part until the counseling office. "This is what I did to them," she said. She kept thinking. 7 years of silence. And now silence was all she had left too. She didn't tell us this to be forgiven. She told us because by the time she said it, she'd already sat with it long enough alone that the truth had stopped being something she could avoid. The week after the school incident passed in careful quiet. Colleen didn't show up again. Didn't text. Didn't call. I didn't know what that silence meant, retreat or planning, but I knew better than to trust it. Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock. I was reading in the living room when Serena appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of yellowed envelopes against her chest, handling them like they might crumble. "Dad, can we talk?" she asked. "There's something I want to show you." I set my book down. "Of course, everything okay?" "Yeah." She sat on the opposite end of the couch, the stack still pressed against her. I think you should see these." She placed them on this coffee table between us. 23 letters, some in envelopes addressed in careful cursive, "Mom." Others loose pages folded into quarters. The paper had aged unevenly, some edges brown, corners torn. My breath caught. "I wrote these after she left," Serena said quietly. "For about 3 years. I didn't know." "I never sent them," she interrupted gently. "Never even told you they existed." 23 letters over 3 years, averaging one every 6 weeks, each one a small hope that went unanswered. I reached toward the stack, then stopped, waiting for permission. Serena nodded. The top envelope was addressed in 9-year-old handwriting, slightly uneven, the word "Mom" underlined twice. No address, no stamp. "Can I?" I asked. She nodded again. I opened it carefully, pulled out notebook paper. The handwriting was younger, rounder, pressing hard into the page. "Dear Mom, I got an A on my science project about volcanoes. Dad helped me build it, but I wished you were here to see it. Mrs. Patterson said it was the best one in the class. I saved the ribbon for you. Love, Serena. My throat tightened. I set it down. Can I read some to you? Serena asked softly. I think it's easier if I do it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She picked up a letter dated October 2019, when she would have been 10. Are you ever coming back? She read, voice steady but quiet. It's okay if you're not. I just want to know. Felix asks about you sometimes and I don't know what to tell him. Dad says you needed to find yourself, but I don't understand what that means. Did you get lost? Love, Serena. She set that one down, picked up another. The handwriting was more mature now, letters smaller and controlled. This one's from when I was 12, she said. February 2021. She cleared her throat. This is my last letter. If you don't answer this one, I'm going to stop trying. I turned 12 last month. You missed it. You've missed 3 birthdays now. You missed my middle school orientation and my first school dance, and when I got my period and didn't know what to do. Denise helped me with that. Denise helps me with everything. I don't think I need you anymore, but I wanted to give you one more chance. Love, Serena. The last letter, age 12. The moment a child decided to stop hoping. She set it down and looked at me. My eyes were wet. I didn't try to hide it. Serena, I managed. I'm so sorry you carried this alone. I wanted her so badly back then, Serena said. Every birthday, every school thing, I wanted her there. I wrote these because I thought maybe if I kept trying, she'd remember she had kids who needed her. She paused, running her finger along the edge of the stack. But I don't feel that way anymore, she continued. I grew up. She didn't grow with me. Denise was there for all of it. You were there for all of it. And I realized around 13 that the person I was writing to didn't exist. I'd invented a version of my mother who cared, who wanted to come back. She looked at me directly, but that wasn't real. The real version left and didn't look back for 7 years. The real version showed up at a school meeting to claim me in front of strangers instead of earning her way back privately. And I don't need her anymore. I wanted her then. I don't want her now. Do you want her to see these? I asked gently. They're proof of what she missed. What you offered that she never answered. Serena considered for a long moment, fingers resting on the stack. Maybe, she said finally, but not yet. She met my eyes. I need to decide if she's earned that. If she deserves to know what I wanted back then. These letters are mine. My grief, my hope, my letting go. And I'm not ready to give them to someone who might not understand what they cost me. Maybe, but not yet. Carried the weight of a door left slightly open. Not slammed shut, but guarded carefully, with terms only Serena could set. I reached across the coffee table and squeezed her hand. She squeezed back, didn't pull away. The letters rested between us. 23 pieces of yellowed proof that a child had loved her mother desperately and received nothing in return. 23 small griefs written in careful handwriting, hope diminishing with each unanswered attempt. They might reach Colleen someday. But that choice belonged to Serena alone. Thank you for showing me, I said quietly. I wanted you to know, Serena said. I wanted you to understand that when I told her this isn't the place at the school, I wasn't being cruel. I was being honest. She lost the right to my automatic love a long time ago. If she wants it back, she has to earn it. She stood, gathered the letters carefully, held them against her chest. I'm keeping them, she said. But I wanted you to know they existed, that I tried, that I stopped, and that whatever happens next with her, it's my choice. I nodded, throat too tight for words. She walked to the doorway, then turned back. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. Saturday morning came too fast. The counseling office at Palmetto Elementary held 5 chairs arranged in a careful circle, neutral ground where 7 years of silence would finally break into words. We arrived separately. I brought Felix and Serena in my truck at 9:55. Colleen's Honda was already there. Ms. Henderson met us at the door. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "This is a safe space to talk." The counseling office was small. Soft blue walls, bulletin board covered with posters about feelings. 5 chairs formed a circle in the center. No desk, no head position, equal ground. Colleen sat in one chair already, hands folded. She looked up when we entered, started to smile, then didn't. Felix immediately took the seat beside mine. Serena chose the seat directly across from Colleen, creating maximum distance within the circle. Ms. Henderson closed the door and sat in the remaining chair. "How long will this be?" Felix whispered to me. "As long as it needs to be, buddy," I whispered back. "You can leave any time if it's too much." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. Felix hadn't looked at Colleen once since we walked in. His 9-year-old strategy was to make her invisible by not seeing her at all. Ms. Henderson addressed the circle. "Some ground rules," she said. "Everyone speaks when they're ready. No interruptions. Anyone can ask for a break at any time. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about understanding." Colleen nodded eagerly. "I appreciate this opportunity." Serena's face remained neutral, hands resting on her knees, watching Colleen with calm attention. Ms. Henderson looked around the circle. "Would anyone like to start?" Colleen spoke immediately. "I want to say first that I'm grateful we're all here," she began, voice steady and rehearsed. "I know I hurt all of you when I left, and I'm sorry for that. I felt like I was disappearing back then, like I'd lost myself in motherhood and marriage. I was 35 years old, and I couldn't remember who I was anymore." She looked at Felix, then Serena. Felix stared at the floor. Serena's expression didn't change. "I needed to find myself again," Colleen continued. "I know that sounds selfish, but I was drowning, and I thought if I could just have some space, some time to figure out who I was outside of being a wife and mother, I could come back whole." She paused, waiting for reaction. "Got none. I'm sorry for the pain I caused," she said. "I never wanted to hurt you, and I want to rebuild what we lost." Silence filled the circle. Serena spoke into it, her voice calm and clear. "You say you needed space," she said. "But you didn't just take space, you disappeared completely. No birthday cards, no calls, no letters. 7 years of nothing. Can you explain that?" Colleen blinked, clearly not expecting specific accountability so quickly. I thought it would be easier for everyone if I made a clean break," she said. "Less confusing." "Easier for who?" Serena asked. The question was simple, direct, not angry, just factual. Serena's calm was more devastating than screaming would be. She wasn't emotional, she was judicial, cross-examining with precision. Colleen shifted in her chair. "I thought it would be easier for you kids. Less hoping I'd come back when I wasn't ready." "I did hope you'd come back," Serena said quietly. "For 3 years, I hoped. I wrote you letters, 23 of them. Never sent them because I didn't have an address. You made sure I didn't have a way to reach you." Colleen's face went pale. "I didn't know you wrote letters." "How could you?" Serena asked. "You weren't there to know." Ms. Henderson shifted slightly, monitoring the exchange but didn't intervene. Serena leaned forward. "Why now?" she asked. "After 7 years, why come back now? What changed?" Colleen's answer came smooth, practiced. "I realized I was missing your lives," she said. "You're 16 now, Serena. Felix is 9. I've missed so much. I wanted to be part of your lives again before more time passed." Serena waited, expression unchanging. The silence stretched. "That's not all of it, though," Serena said finally. "Is it?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement, calm and certain, from someone who already knew the answer. Colleen looked around the circle. At me. At Ms. Henderson. Anywhere but at Serena. Her composure started to crack. I don't know what you mean, she said. Yes, you do, Serena said quietly. Something specific happened 3 months ago that made you come back. What was it? The silence grew heavy. Colleen's hands twisted in her lap. Colleen's voice broke when she finally spoke. My relationship ended, she said. 3 months ago. The relationship I'd built in Atlanta, it ended. She looked up, eyes wet. I was alone and scared, and I thought of you. I thought of my children. I realized what I'd given up, what I'd lost. I had nowhere else to turn. 7 words that reduced children from beloved to backup plan. The room went absolutely silent. Serena's face showed no surprise. Only confirmation. So we're a backup plan, she said softly. No, Colleen said quickly. No, that's not. I do want to be in your lives. I do miss you. The breakup made me realize it. Made me face what I'd thrown away. But the truth was out now, hanging in the air between us. Colleen hadn't come back because maternal instinct finally kicked in. She'd come back because her other life had fallen apart, and she was lonely and desperate. She'd come back because everyone else had left her. I looked at Serena. Her calm expression hadn't cracked. If anything, she looked vindicated, like Colleen had just confirmed everything she'd suspected all along. Felix still stared at the floor, shoulders hunched, making himself as small as possible. Colleen sat across the circle, tears on her cheeks. The careful facade she'd built completely shattered, and Ms. Henderson watched us all, witnessing a truth too raw to soften. Colleen's admission hung in the counseling office air. I had nowhere else to turn. 5 people sat processing what that meant. She hadn't come back for them. She'd come back because everyone else had left her. Ms. Henderson shifted, about to intervene, when Felix moved beside me. Just a small shift, but everyone noticed. We all turned to look at the 9-year-old who'd been silent the entire meeting. His face was scrunched in concentration, the way it got when he was working through math problems, thinking hard, trying to understand adult words with child logic. Then he looked up at Colleen, the first time he'd made eye contact with her since we'd arrived. So, he said quietly, if your boyfriend didn't leave you, would you still want to see us? The question landed like a stone through glass. Pure child logic, no malice, no anger. Just a 9-year-old trying to make the math work. Because you said you came back because you were alone, Felix explained, working through it out loud. So if you weren't alone, he trailed off, waiting for an answer. 9-year-old Felix had just asked the question 3 adults couldn't, and nobody had an answer that didn't confirm his logic. Colleen opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I did want to see you, but the words fell apart. Any answer she gave would prove Felix right. Yes meant she only wanted them because she was desperate. No was a lie. The truth was there in her silence. Felix waited, patient and serious. When no answer came, he nodded slightly, like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. Ms. Henderson cleared her throat gently. Perhaps we should take a 5-minute break, she suggested. I stood immediately, put my hand on Felix's shoulder. Come on, buddy, I said. Let's get some water. In the hallway, I texted Denise. She'd been waiting in the parking lot, ready to come in if needed. I needed her now. 5 minutes later, when we returned to the counseling office, Denise was there. She stood beside my chair, hand resting lightly on the back. Felix sat beside me. Serena looked at Denise, then at me, then at Colleen. Denise's presence in the circle wasn't intrusion. It was completion of the picture Colleen couldn't deny. How are they? Denise asked me quietly. Serena's processing, I said. Felix asked the question none of us could. Serena met Denise's eyes. I'm glad you're here, she said simply. Denise pulled up a sixth chair to join our circle. Ms. Henderson watched, but didn't object. This was who we were. This was our family. Colleen stared at Denise, then at her children sitting with us, united. The configuration said everything. Serena stood, not dramatically, just calmly rising from her chair. Everyone's attention shifted to her. I need to say something, she said. The room went utterly silent. Serena looked at Colleen directly. We're not broken, Serena said, her voice clear and steady. We don't need fixing. Our family is whole. The words hung in the air. Colleen's face crumpled slightly. You left a hole, Serena continued, and her voice carried no rage, no tears, just the steady authority of someone who'd already done the grieving and come out whole. You left a hole and we filled it. Not because we forgot you, not because we didn't love you, because we had to survive. She paused. I wanted you for years. I wrote you letters. I asked Dad where you were. I cried on birthdays and holidays and the first day of school. Felix doesn't even remember you. He was too little. He grew up with Denise as his mother because that's who showed up. Colleen's hands twisted in her lap, tears streaming, but she didn't interrupt. Denise didn't take your place, Serena said, glancing at Denise with gratitude. There was no place left to take. You left it empty 7 years ago. She filled the empty space because someone had to, and you weren't there. Serena's voice softened, but didn't waver. I'm not trying to hurt you, she said. I'm just telling you the truth. You came back because you were lonely and scared, and you needed somewhere to go. But we're not a shelter. We're not a backup plan. We're people. We're a family. And we built that family in the space you left behind. She looked at me, then at Felix, then at Denise. Dad held us together when you left. Denise helped raise us when you didn't want to. We survived. We healed. We're whole now. Not perfect, but whole. And you showing up after 7 years doesn't make us incomplete. It doesn't make what we built somehow less valid. Serena took a breath. I'm 16 years old, she said. Old enough to decide who I let into my life. Old enough to decide who's earned a place in it. You're my biological mother. That's true. That will always be true. But that doesn't automatically mean you get to be part of my life now. She sat back down, hands folded calmly in her lap. The silence that followed was absolute. Colleen stared at her daughter. The child she'd left at 9 now, a woman at 16, clear-eyed and unbroken. Tears ran down Colleen's face, but she didn't try to argue, didn't try to defend herself. Slowly, just once, she nodded. No arguments left. No position to reclaim. No defense against the simple, devastating truth Serena had laid out with neither anger nor revenge, just clarity. The truth had defeated her more thoroughly than anger ever could. I reached over and squeezed Serena's hand. She squeezed back. Felix leaned against my other side, quiet and still. Denise stood behind us, hand still resting on my shoulder, and Colleen sat across the circle, finally understanding what she'd lost and knowing it was gone. The drive home from Palmetto Elementary was quiet but not heavy, the silence of people who'd said what needed saying and had nothing left to prove. Felix sat in the back seat playing a game on my phone, soft beeping sounds filling the truck. Serena stared out the window at passing palm trees, expression calm. Denise rode beside me, her hand resting on the center console where mine could reach it. Nobody asked what happened to Colleen after we left. Ms. Henderson had walked us out while Colleen stayed in the counseling office, still processing. That was her journey now, not ours. We pulled into the driveway at noon. Saturday afternoon stretched ahead, ordinary and warm. Can I play games until dinner? Felix asked, unbuckling his seatbelt. 30 minutes, I said, then homework. Okay. He bolted inside, already returning to normal. Serena followed more slowly, stopping at the doorway to look back. I'm going to read for a while, she said. I nodded. Let me know if you need anything. She disappeared upstairs. Denise and I stood in the kitchen, the house settling back into familiar rhythm. Pasta okay for tonight? Denise asked, opening the pantry. Perfect, I said. And just like that, we returned to our lives. No debriefing, no emotional processing, just normalcy. The medicine we needed. Felix asking for ice cream dessert later would be more healing than any therapy session could be. Normalcy was the medicine. By 6:30, all four of us sat at the dinner table. Pasta with marinara, garlic bread, salad. How's your science project coming, Felix? Denise asked. Good. We're doing volcanoes next week. Can you help me build one, Dad? Absolutely, I said. We'll get supplies tomorrow. Serena twirled pasta on her fork, listening to Felix explain the difference between composite and shield volcanoes with 9-year-old enthusiasm. Can we have ice cream for dessert? Felix asked, interrupting his own geology lesson. I'll get it, Serena said, standing. Chocolate or vanilla, Felix? Both, I said, before Felix could answer. Serena smiled, small but genuine, and went to the freezer. We ate ice cream at the table, Felix getting chocolate sauce on his chin. Serena stealing bites from Denise's bowl when she pretended not to notice. Ordinary, whole, complete. After dinner, Serena helped clear the table without being asked. Felix carried his plate to the sink. Tongue stuck out in concentration. I washed while Denise dried, the choreography we'd developed over 3 years. The choreography of clearing dishes together was proof of family. Not the title, not the biology, but the rhythm of knowing where everyone belongs. Class, please remember the scientific method, Felix announced in a high, prissy voice, imitating his teacher perfectly. Serena laughed. You sound exactly like her. You two are trouble, Denise said, smiling. Felix beamed, then ran off to finish his screen time. Serena followed a few minutes later, calling goodnight from the stairs. Denise and I stood alone in the kitchen, dish towel still in her hands. She touched my hand across the counter. I squeezed back. No words needed. Just gratitude for what we'd built, what we'd protected, what we'd kept whole. Gratitude for her, for showing up, for staying, for loving my children like they were hers. She squeezed my hand once more, then went to check on Felix's bedtime routine. I stood in the quiet kitchen, listening to sounds of my family upstairs. Water running, Felix protesting bedtime, Serena's door closing softly. Home, whole, ours. Few days later, Wednesday evening, I was prepping vegetables for dinner when I noticed Serena through the kitchen window. She crossed the backyard, carrying a stack of yellowed envelopes, moving with purpose toward the fire pit. I understood immediately. The letters. The 23 unsent letters she'd kept hidden for 5 years. I set down the knife and watched. This was hers, not mine to interfere with. She knelt beside the fire pit, arranged kindling with practiced efficiency. The lighter clicked once, twice, then caught. Small flames grew steadily. Serena sat back on her heels, the stack of letters in her lap. She picked up the first one, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it in the flames. The last letter, and with it, 23 pieces of childhood grief, curled into ash in 20 minutes of quiet fire. I watched from the window as she worked through the stack. Some she read first, lips moving silently over 9-year-old handwriting. Others went straight to the flames, unread. Each one caught fire, curled black at the edges, turned to ash and smoke. This wasn't dramatic closure or revenge. It was just release. Letting go of weight she'd carried too long, not because anyone told her to, not because the confrontation demanded it, just because she was done carrying them. The last letter, the one from age 12 that said, "This is my last letter," sat on top of the pile. Serena held it longer than the others, reading it completely. Then she folded it carefully, the way it had been folded for years, and placed it gently on the coals. I stepped onto the patio, moved quietly across the yard, stood beside her without speaking. She glanced up at me, firelight reflecting in her eyes. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," she said, and I heard the truth in it. "I really am." We watched the last letter burn together. The paper curled, blackened, disintegrated into ash that rose with the smoke into the June evening sky. The fire burned down to embers, orange and fading, and the past burned with it. Not erased, not forgotten, but released. Transformed into something lighter than the weight of carrying it forward. Serena stood, brushed ash from her hands. "I'm starving," she said. "What's for dinner?" I smiled. "Stir fry. Come help me chop vegetables." We walked back to the house together, leaving the fire to burn itself out, leaving the ashes to scatter in the warm Miami breeze. 2 weeks after the letters burned to ash, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter with a name I hadn't seen in 14 days, Colleen Morgan. I was loading the dishwasher, kids upstairs doing homework. Thursday evening settling into its familiar rhythm. The buzz felt wrong, intrusive, out of place in the peace we'd built. Denise noticed from across the kitchen where she was wiping down counters. She saw my face, the way I'd frozen with a dinner plate still in my hand. "Her?" she asked quietly. I nodded, setting the plate down. Stared at the phone screen for a moment before picking it up. "What does she want?" Denise asked. No anger in her voice, just careful curiosity. I opened the message, 3 texts, sent one after another. I read them twice before responding to Denise's question. "I understand now," the first message read. "You built something I can't replace." The second, "If Serena or Felix ever want to reach out, I'm here. On their terms, not mine." The third, "I'm sorry it took losing them to understand what you gave them." I turned the phone so Denise could read over my shoulder. She moved closer, read silently, her expression thoughtful. Colleen's text finally sounded like someone who learned rather than someone strategizing. The difference was everything. "She sounds different," Denise said after a moment. Like she finally heard what Serena said. I nodded slowly. The message had none of Colleen's usual deflection, no manipulation, no attempt to negotiate her way back in. Just acknowledgement, acceptance, boundaries respected. "What are you going to say?" Denise asked. I set the phone back on the counter, face down. "I'm not going to respond right now," I said. "Maybe not at all, but I won't delete it." Denise understood immediately. "In case the kids want it someday." "Yeah," I said. Serena said maybe, but not yet. That door's hers to open if she chooses. Same for Felix. But this, I gestured at the phone, this is different from before. She's not demanding anything. She's just there, available, if they decide they want her to be. Denise touched my hand across the counter, squeezed once. "That's the right call," she said. I didn't delete the message, but I didn't respond. Door left cracked open is not the same as door flung wide. I finished loading the dishwasher. Denise finished the counters. We called the kids down for dessert, leftover ice cream from Saturday. Felix told a joke his friend had taught him at recess. Serena rolled her eyes but laughed anyway. Ordinary, normal, whole. An hour later, kids in bed. Denise and I sat on the back patio under June stars. Warm night, humid air carrying the smell of jasmine from the neighbor's yard. Quiet neighborhood. Distant sound of someone's TV through an open window. Crickets starting their evening chorus. No crisis to manage. No boundary to defend. Just peaceful evening together. Denise sat in the chair beside mine, bare feet propped on the patio table. Glass of iced tea, sweating condensation in the warm air. Did you ever imagine it would turn out like this? She asked, voice quiet in the darkness. I thought about it. Tried to remember where my head had been 7 years ago when Colleen left and I was suddenly alone with 2 kids and no idea how to do any of it. 7 years ago? I said. I couldn't imagine past the next day. I was just trying to figure out how to make breakfast and get everyone dressed and out the door on time. I didn't have the luxury of imagining a future. I paused, remembering. I just kept going. One breakfast, one bus stop, one bedtime at a time. Hoping I wasn't screwing them up too badly. Hoping they'd be okay. Denise was quiet for a moment, listening to the crickets. You built something real, she said finally. Something whole. We built it, I corrected. You, me, the kids. It's not mine, it's ours. She smiled in the darkness. I could hear it in her voice when she spoke. Felix wants to do competitive swimming this fall, she said. He asked me about it yesterday. Said his friend Jacob's on a team and it looks fun. He told me, I said. You think we can handle the schedule? Practices are 3 mornings a week before school, plus Saturday meets. The most romantic thing Denise and I discussed was Felix's swimming schedule, because that's what real love looks like. We'll make it work, Denise said. Same way we make everything work. We'll figure out the carpool, pack extra breakfast to eat in the car, adjust our shifts. I nodded, already mentally mapping out logistics. Which mornings I could drop him off. Which mornings Denise could. How we'd cover the Saturday meets without disrupting Serena's weekend study time before college entrance exams next year. And Serena wants to visit University of Miami in August, Denise continued. Start looking at campuses before application season gets crazy. She mentioned that, I said. Wants to tour Florida State, too. See what feels right. 2 years from now, she'll be gone, Denise said quietly. Off to college, starting her own life. Yeah, I said. The thought sat heavy and light at the same time. Sad to imagine the house without her. Proud of who she'd become. And Felix will be 11, Denise said. Middle school. Terrifying, I said, but I smiled. We'll handle it, Denise said. Same way we've handled everything else. She reached across the space between our chairs. I took her hand, laced my fingers with hers. Stars overhead. Warm June night. 2 people who built a family from what remained, sitting side by side on the patio. No words needed. The future wasn't dramatic. It was breakfast tomorrow, and swimming practice next week, and college tours next year, and all the ordinary moments that make a life. Denise squeezed my hand. I squeezed back, inside, through the window. I could see the kitchen lights still on, dinner dishes drying in the rack. Felix's backpack hanging on its hook by the door. Serena's history textbook left on the counter. Home, whole, hours. We should get to bed, Denise said eventually. Early shift tomorrow. 5 more minutes, I said. She settled back into her chair, hand still holding mine. 5 more minutes, she agreed. We sat under the stars, breathing the warm night air, listening to crickets and distant traffic and the quiet sounds of our neighborhood settling into sleep. Peaceful, complete, exactly where we were supposed to be. Saturday morning in late June, and the Garrett house woke to the kind of ordinary that once seemed impossible, the kind you earn one breakfast, one homework session, one bedtime at a time. Sunlight poured through kitchen windows. Denise stood at the stove making pancakes, blueberry, Felix's favorite. The smell of butter and vanilla filled the house. Serena sat at the dining table with her summer course textbook open, yellow highlighter in hand. Felix sprawled on the living room floor, building something with Legos, tongue stuck out in concentration. I was in the garage with my toolbox open, fixing a loose hinge on the garden gate that had been squeaking for a week. "Breakfast in 10 minutes!" Denise called from the kitchen. "Can I finish this level first?" Felix shouted back. I'll set the table, Serena said, closing her textbook. Ordinary, normal, the rhythm we'd built over years of showing up. I worked the screwdriver methodically, checking the hinge plate, testing the swing, tightening each screw with patient precision. Muscle memory from years maintaining aircraft. The discipline of doing it right, not fast. Aircraft maintenance taught me patience. You don't fix a plane with grand gestures. You check every rivet, every connection, every seal. You follow procedure. You show up every day and do the work that needs doing. Family's the same. 10,000 small moments of showing up. Breakfast made. Homework checked. Permission slips signed. Bedtime stories read. Doctor appointments scheduled. Science projects built at the kitchen table at 9 p.m. the night before they're due. I tested the gate swing again. Smooth now, no squeak. Fixed. People asked me sometimes how I did it alone for 7 years. I didn't do it alone for 7 years. I did it one breakfast at a time. One homework assignment. One goodnight kiss. One morning at the bus stop. One evening helping with math problems I barely remembered from high school. I couldn't have told you 7 years ago where we'd end up. Couldn't have imagined Denise in our kitchen making pancakes, Serena preparing for college, Felix calling someone mom, who wasn't the woman who gave birth to him. I didn't plan this outcome. I just focused on next meal, next school drop-off, next bedtime story. I closed the toolbox, wiped my hands on a rag. Through the garage doorway, I could see into the backyard where morning sun lit up the grass. Movement caught my eye. Felix, exploring the far corner, near the hedge where flowers grew wild. He crouched down, studying something with intense 9-year-old focus. Then he stood up suddenly, cupping his hands carefully around something, and ran toward the house. I watched from the garage doorway. The moment unfolded in slow motion. "Mom!" Felix shouted, running across the yard toward the kitchen door. "Mom, look what I found! Mom!" The same word from months ago, but this time no one watching who needs convincing. The same call he'd made that day in May, when Colleen had been watching from the street, when her return had just begun to disrupt our peace. The day that started everything. But this time no one was watching. No one needed convincing. No disruption. Just a boy calling to his mother because he found something wonderful and wanted to share it. Denise met him at the door, spatula still in hand. "What is it, honey?" she asked, bending down to his level. "A blue butterfly," Felix said, opening his cupped hands slightly. "Can I keep it?" "Butterflies need to be free, sweetheart," Denise said gently. "But we can watch it together before you let it go." Serena appeared in the doorway beside them, looking over Felix's shoulder. "It's beautiful, Felix," she said. I stood in the garage doorway, wrench still in my hand, watching the scene unfold. Felix showing Denise his treasure, Serena leaning in to look. Denise's hand on Felix's shoulder. The three of them gathered around a blue butterfly, cupped in 9-year-old hands. My family. Just 7 years of pancakes and homework and bedtime stories. 7 years of showing up when it mattered. This is what I built. Not by defending or fighting or proving, by showing up. Every single day. The title Mom was never biology's to give. It was always presence's to earn. And Denise earned it. One blueberry pancake at a time. One school pickup. One bedtime routine. One middle-of-the-night comfort when Felix had a nightmare. One long conversation with Serena about friendship and growing up. She earned it the same way I'd earned Dad. Not through genetics or legal documents or dramatic declarations, but through presence. Felix carefully carried his butterfly back outside to release it, Denise and Serena following. I watched them through the kitchen window, Serena's hand on Felix's shoulder, Denise pointing to where the butterfly might find flowers, the three of them standing together in morning sunlight. I picked up my tools and headed back to the garage to put everything away. Ordinary Saturday morning. Pancakes getting cold on the stove. Kids playing in the backyard. Garden gate fixed. Nothing dramatic. Nothing remarkable. Just a family. My family. Built one moment at a time. And that was everything. And to you listening to my story, remember this. Family isn't always the people who share your blood. Looking back, I could have made this a revenge story. I could have fought Colleen with anger when she returned, used the courts, turned the kids against her out of spite. But I learned something more powerful. The best response to abandonment isn't revenge. It's showing up every single day, building something so solid that when someone tries to tear it down 7 years later, it stands firm not because you defended it, but because it was built on truth. The lesson I carry forward is this. Presence matters more than biology. Quality isn't measured in years or genetics. It's measured in being there when it counts. Breakfast made. Homework checked. Tears wiped. Laughter shared. This isn't a revenge story about getting back at someone who hurt you. It's a story about building something real while they were gone. And I believe God put me through this journey to teach me that the quiet work of showing up every day creates bonds stronger than any claim of biology ever could. If this story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to choose between what people expected and what was actually right? Share this story with someone who needs to hear that family is built, not born. And if you want more stories like this, please subscribe to this channel. Your support means everything. Thank you for staying until the very end. I truly appreciate you being here with me. One final note, certain details in this story have been shaped for reflection and storytelling. Any resemblance to real events is coincidental, and what matters most is the message we can all carry forward.